Now, to try and explore what kind of deal the White House is trying to reach with Pyongyang, we have in the studio with us Dr. Bong Young-shik, a researcher at the Yonsei Institute for North Korean Studies. Dr. Bong, it's good to have you with us here today.
Pleased to be here.
Now, in the report we just heard, it said that Trump seems to be going for a go big approach. Now, this is further backed by Trump's right-hand man, National Security Advisor John Bolton, who has called on North Korea to put all its weapons of mass destruction on the table. That includes nuclear weapons, chemical, biological weapons, etc. Bolton has previously described this as the Libya Model. Now, what is the Libya Model, and do you think it's going that way?
Well, Libya Model implies that the nuclear proliferant would pledge dismantlement of all its existing nuclear facilities and the weapon materials, and in exchange for diplomatic normalization and economic benefits. So the first step is the proliferance decision and action of denuclearization, and the United States will accordingly provide concessions and reward. So it is up to North Korean leadership whether it will take the first step toward the denuclearization. Although National Security Advisor Mr. John Bolton suggested that North Korea's WMDs, all WMDs, including biological and chemical weapons, had to be on the table for negotiations, but there is no guarantee that North Korean leadership would agree on such big and open negotiations, including something beyond intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear, weapon warheads.
But doesn't those words alone, such aggressive words from John Bolton, potentially risk upsetting Pyongyang before the agreement, before the summit even takes place? Or is it just a tactic to see how far North Korea can be pushed?
Well, I guess it has both dimensions. As Mr. Donald Trump himself repeatedly said in the past, that this issue, the North Korea's provocations with nuclear weapons and long-range missiles, should have been settled 25 years ago. It was not supposed to arrive at his desk. So going big and making huge demands for CVID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of all nuclear weapons and missiles that North Korea seems to have now, should be the major goal that the United States government is going to pursue. And unlike the previous engagement and negotiations between Washington and Pyongyang, this time and uncertainty do not favor North Korea, but favor the United States. Because as the early segment of this news program reported that North Korean economy has been transformed to more heavily dependent upon import of foreign goods, on par with France, about 20% of its GDP. So North Korean economy is as vulnerable as it has ever been to the pressure of economic sanctions. So North Korea cannot sustain itself if it fails to produce some breakthrough that will help lift at least some of the existing economic sanctions on itself. Otherwise, the North Korean system is likely to be cracking in the absence of any big deal with the United States on its nuclear weapons and missiles.
So you're saying North Korea is actually quite serious about giving up its nuclear weapons?
If being serious also means being desperate, yes, I would say yes. North Korea is serious about making a deal with the United States, because without making the deal, then North Korea's long-term survival is in a serious risk.
But then this definition of denuclearization, Kim Jong-un has said he wants a phased and synchronous process towards denuclearization, and that he'll bring it up with Trump during the summit. But at the moment, the US's stance is saying that first, we want complete denuclearization. There is no step-by-step approach as such. How are they going to be able to resolve these differences then?
Well, it should be settled and agreed between the two leaders in the upcoming summit meeting in Singapore on 12th of June. But you're absolutely correct that the United States government has repeatedly confirmed that it has no interest in synchronized and step-by-step manners for denuclearization of North Korea. So the midpoint that can be reached possibly between Washington and Pyongyang would be there will be like a couple of big steps between the current situations and the ultimate situation in which North Korea has completed denuclearization in a few big steps, and both sides would work together to shorten the entire process as fast as possible. But as I said, that North Korea is not in the driver's seat at this juncture. It is the United States that seems to have an upper hand thanks to the cumulative effect of economic sanctions, for which, for the first time, China has been on the same page with the United States.
So the US stance does, on one hand, with John Bolton, seem to have a hardline, aggressive stance of denuclearization first. But then comes US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who promises possible incentives, such as private American investment once North Korea agrees to denuclearize. Now, these two officials seem to be playing bad cop, good cop, or playing a carrot and the stick approach. Would you agree to that?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in terms of speaking different dimensions of the same policy. No, in terms of them speaking the same policy, which is dubbed as a maximum pressure, maximum engagement with the nuclear North Korea. I guess the John Bolton's remarks represent the first part of Trump administration's policy toward North Korea, which is putting maximum pressure. And Secretary of the State Mike Pompeo's remark seems to indicate the other half of the same policy, maximum engagement with North Korea. But we have to remember that Secretary Pompeo did not say that there will be massive economic assistance and foreign direct investment going into North Korea. He only alluded that the United States would actively consider giving licenses to United States corporations that might be interested in doing business inside North Korea. And the ultimate goal for North Korea must be achieving the same level of prosperity with as South Korea. But that's such a long-term goal. So anything can happen before North Korea will have actually arrived at that ultimate destination. Because it took South Korea about 40 years from the point when it abandoned its ambition to be a nuclear power state, which was stopped by the sudden death of then President Park Chung-hee in 1979, and today. So it is very hard to conceive that North Korea will achieve the same impressive industrialization and high level of economic prosperity less than 40 years.
Of course, it probably will take a very long time, as you said. But let's go back to now first what the North Korea message they're sending out. So they've invited journalists to come see the dismantling of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. And they've invited international journalists, but not international inspectors or nuclear experts. North Korea will have to let eventually inspectors in at some point, but right now it doesn't seem to be a good sign that they're not letting inspectors in for this dismantling of the test site.
I guess that is the reason why the State Department of the United States government seems to be backpedaling from the initial welcoming attitude toward the North Korean government's decision to shut down the Punggye-ri nuclear underground test site. That although the President Trump initially tweeted that it is a very smart and gracious decision by North Korean leadership, but later the State Department made a very kind of a, hedging its bet, saying that although it's a welcoming development, but we would like to urge North Korean government to also invite professional inspectors, because we have to make distinction between shutting down and dismantlement of the nuclear facility. When North Korean leadership is going to shut down the Punggye-ri underground tunnels, then that means that if at any moment that North Korean leadership ever changes its mind, then it can just open it up and use it for a future nuclear test. Shutdown does not mean dismantlement of the facility. and allowing North Korean government to just explode or shut down the Punggye nuclear site is in a way equivalent to allowing North Korean government to destroy the crime scene, because you can get a lot of concrete evidence to gauge what kind of nuclear weapon-grade material North Korea has produced, and how much and what kind of nuclear materials North Korea has used to conduct 6 nuclear tests, and whether there is any technological connections and assistance from outside North Korea, including Pakistan. All those fingerprints of North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons will be gone if the outside world will just allow the North Korean government to explode the scene in Punggye.
Now, let me move on before we finish to another announcement that was made today. Now, Seoul announced that the high-level inter-Korean talks will take place tomorrow with North Korea in Panmunjom. Now, Seoul said they will talk about implementing proponents of the Panmunjom Declaration, but the US summit looms over it. Do you think they will talk about that, and possibly what they will talk about with America?
I think the priority of the inter-Korean high-level talks will be inter-Korean matters, as opposed to the upcoming summit meeting between North Korea and the United States, focused on denuclearization. I think the reason why they agreed to have this meeting is to meet the very fast-pacing schedules to realize what was agreed in the third inter-Korean summit meeting that took place on the 27th of April. And we are scheduled to have a high-level mill-to-mill, military-to-military talk before the end of May this month, and a high-level government-to-government meeting for a reunion of separate family members, and a sports event to take place in August. So you have a very tight schedule on the table. And I like to emphasize that although this is a very positive progress for the sake of improving inter-Korean relations, but this is like riding on a rocking chair. It may give you a sense of movement, but it does not actually keep you moving forward. So inter-Korean talks and negotiations are good by and of themselves, but they do not have any direct impact on progress on denuclearization of North Korea, because that agenda will be determined mostly between North Korea and the United States.
So for denuclearization, the talks, these inter-Korean summit talks aren't particularly going to make much progress. But for inter-Korean related activities, there should be some movements. For example, as you mentioned, the Asian Games inter-Korean team and the separated family reunions, both very, especially the separated family reunions, a very sensitive topic and something very close to Korean people's hearts.
Right. I don't deny that these are all very important developments for inter-Korean relations to improve. But those events do not guarantee equal success on the front of denuclearization of North Korea. These are two separate matters. Rocking chairs do not let you move forward.
Okay. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for coming in, Doctor. And we look forward to having you back soon.
You're welcome.